You're listening to Soundside. I'm Gabriel Spitzer in for Libby Dankman. The Seattle School Board says it's extending the search for a new superintendent past the original deadline to hire somebody by this fall. That means the district will not have a permanent leader when its roughly 50,000 students come back in September. It's the latest turn in a story that's been going on for a while. In May, Superintendent Brent Jones went on medical leave after 4 years on the job and left Fred Podesta as the acting superintendent. Jones will leave the district in September. KUOW's Sami West is here now for more on what this delay means for students, parents, and teachers. Sami's an online reporter and editor and used to cover education for KUOW. Hi, Sami.
Hey, Gabe. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so the school board initially had said that they would have a new permanent superintendent by this fall. Why are they drawing out the search at this point?
They simply need more time to gather feedback from the community. Seattle School Board President Gina Top had been pretty bullish when we'd spoken in the past about wanting the permanent superintendent to be in place as soon as possible. So kind of the deadline she'd set was the fall of 2025. But she's changed her tone recently. She told me last week that if we need to take some more time to make sure we get this right, that's what we're going to do. So that's what they're going to do. She says it just kind of became clear that they needed more time to hear from people about what qualities they want in that leader. And they really hope that this person will stick around for a long time. So the thinking is that if we give the community a bit more time to weigh in on what kind of person we want for this job, that they're more likely to stick around for the long term.
Well, this process has been going on for a while. Do you have a sense about how much of this delay has to do with really, bringing more public input into the process, and how much of it might have to do with like the number and quality of candidates that they've been seeing so far?
I think it's purely to do with that lack of attendance at community engagement meetings so far. It's summer. Folks are busy and maybe school isn't on the brain. So I know they've had some issues with attendance. I know they've had some issues with getting translations for folks who speak different languages. So that's been an issue. I know they have a community engagement survey that hasn't gotten as much of a response as they want. And also at the same time, with the folks that have been at these meetings, they've been really vocal about wanting more people to weigh in. Like they have said, even though I am here today talking to you, we need more people to be part of this. And so I think this is completely to do with community engagement. I don't think they've gone so far as to interview any candidates or really look at what they've got in that realm so far.
I see. So if people were really asking for this, how have students and parents and teachers been taking this news that they are extending the search and giving people more time?
Everyone I've talked to has kind of been on the same page that it's okay for the board to take some more time if it means that they're going to find the right leader and they'll stick around for as long as possible. Altogether for Seattle Schools, a parent and community advocacy group I spoke with, they're applauding the move. They've been pushing for a slower search for months, arguing the board should prioritize quality over speed, especially after the tumultuous several years the district has had with the ongoing budget deficit and school closure conversations. They feel like this is the most important decision that a school board makes, and so we should just take all the time we need to make that happen.
So the person who's in that interim role right now, Fred Podesta, is an internal, executive with the district. Is there any sense that he is interested in the full-time job?
I've spoken with Altogether for Seattle Schools and school board president Gina Top, and everyone agrees that it might be best to keep Fred Podesta in this interim role as the search continues because, he's been at the district for a long time. He knows what he's doing, and they think he's doing a good job, but all with the caveat that if he is interested in this role for the long term, then he should step aside and someone else should come in, purely because folks don't want to see a repeat of what happened during the district's last superintendent search. Superintendent Brent Jones, who is leaving soon, he was actually an interim superintendent originally, and the board ended up hiring him for the permanent job and abandoning their national search just because they thought he was the right person for the job. But some in the community felt like, that search should have continued, that the board gave up too fast and kept kind of the status quo, kept internal candidates. And so they really don't want to see that happen again.
What were the issues with Brent Jones's tenure? I mean, as you said, he started out as an interim. They kept him on as the permanent person, and they got rid of their national search in order to do that. What were some of the issues that he faced?
Oh gosh, well, he had a pretty wild 4 years at the helm of the district. I mean, when he started, the pandemic was in full swing. And the district had already been in remote learning for about a year. So then when he started, he really had to deal with reopening and all of the logistics and politics that involved. There was a week-long teacher strike. There was multiple incidents of gun violence in and around schools that he had to deal with. And of course, the district's financial woes were kind of at their peak. He had to deal with multiple budget deficits of over $100 million. And obviously the school closure plan last year, that got pretty intense backlash from the community. So he's really had quite a few challenges over his tenure, and I think it's safe to say that the same will be true for whoever takes this job next.
Yeah. I mean, this job has at times in the past been seen as kind of a tough gig. A lot of politics, a lot of very opinionated community of parents and advocates and so on. Does it seem like that is kind of playing into the equation this year?
Yes, for sure. I mean, the fact that we are prolonging the search to kind of get more community input, I think that really suggests what you said about how Seattle has a very engaged, opinionated parent community, and they want to have their say in this big decision. And so I think that's absolutely going to be playing a role in the superintendent search and beyond that, whoever is chosen.
Well, a big factor in the success or challenges that a new superintendent will face is the makeup of the school board, who are sort of his bosses or her bosses. We know that there are 4 school board seats that are going to be on the ballot in November, and those primaries are coming up pretty soon, just on August 5th. Can you tell us a little bit about what the competitive races are there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep everyone here all day and get into too many specifics because we could probably talk about this all day. But this is a big race. Those 4 school board seats mean that there could possibly be a new majority on the board. So this is really pivotal, and it's at a really big time for the district where there are a lot of big decisions to be made, including the superintendent, including, resolving these ongoing budget challenges. So I'll note that 2 longtime board members, Michelle Sarju and Brandon Hersey, are both leaving. So that's a pretty big deal. And then there are 2 board members who were appointed, Sarah Clark and Joe Mizrahi, who are running to keep those seats. But if they don't win, that means we could get 4 new faces on the board. But going back to the August primary, 3 of those 4 seats will be on the ballot in districts 2, 4, and 5. In District 2, that's Sarah Clark's seat. She was appointed to the board last April, and she's been a strong opponent of school closures. She's also spoken up about the ongoing drama lately with option schools and the district limiting enrollment there. So she's been kind of a vocal advocate for families, and she's gotten a lot of endorsements. So it'll be interesting to see which of the 2 challengers will make it through that race. District 4, Joe Mizrahi is currently in that seat. He was appointed just like Sarah Clark was, and just like her, he's been pretty vocal against school closure plans last year and in support of option schools. So those 2, Sarah Clark and Joe Mizrahi, are kind of very similar candidates. It'll be interesting to see what happens in Joe Mizrahi's race. He's got several challengers, including a longtime educator who's ran for this seat in the past as well. District 5 is kind of more of the wild card. This is Michelle Sarju's seat. And there are several folks running for the seat, including former board member Vivian Song, who she used to represent District 2. She stepped down in 2024 after there were reports that she'd been violating state residency requirements. She had moved while she was serving in that seat. And so now she's trying to get reelected to the board, but this time in District 5. She's endorsed by Joe Mizrahi and Sarah Clark, the 2 vocal sort of anti-school closure folks on the board. So it'll be interesting to see whether she makes it into that race as well. But she's got several challengers as well who also have some pretty significant endorsements. So it'll be really interesting to see. And I encourage folks to check out more information about the candidates on the King County Voters Guide. And also there's been a lot of parent advocacy this year. with creating these sort of Q&As and, making their own endorsements the way that the Seattle Times and the Stranger do. So I'd encourage folks to check that out. All Together for Seattle Schools is one of them. And the other group I've seen some solid questionnaires from is Fund SPS. So I encourage folks to check those out.
And Sami, so a lot of open questions still about what the next school board is going to look like. I've heard that there are some advocates and others who are pushing to let that new school board pick the permanent superintendent. Why is that?
Yeah, well, again, over half the seats of the board are up this fall. So again, this is a huge turning point with the board. So some folks have argued that it just makes sense for these new leaders to kind of make that decision if they're the ones who are going to be working with this superintendent anyway. Plus, folks argue it would sort of be the will of the people. The voters are choosing who they want to represent them on the board. And if they're starting in November, they just argue it kind of makes sense. I mean, at this point, we don't really know when the superintendent is going to be coming in. But I'll say, as someone who has covered a few superintendent searches as an education reporter for over 7 years, I will say that usually superintendents will start during the summer leading up to the school year to kind of get ready for that. That's kind of the general timeline. So I think it's a very real possibility that Seattle won't have its superintendent until possibly next spring, next summer. I think that's very realistic. And so it might very well happen that this new board, when they get started, and I think they start in December after the November election, it's very possible they will be deciding anyway.
We've been talking to Sami West, an online reporter and editor for KUOW. Sami, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Gabe.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.